Best fights of 2024, tier list video. This is where we're at. Starting with, let's not waste any time, Dricus and Sean Strickland. Kind of fitting. They started off the year in January. They're going to start off the year kind of in February. Be one of the first pay-per-views. This was a really good back and forth fight. Both guys landing. Dricus doing his blitzing and his chin up and doing Dricus things, getting takedowns. And Sean landing some good jabs, landing the teep, and landing front kicks, I'm sure. No, it was a good back and forth fight. A lot of people thought Sean won it. Dricus was the aggressor, but in terms of strikes, I'm pretty sure Strickland outstruck him, numbers-wise. But either way, it was a really good fight for the title. But there's a lot of other good fights on here. And if I'm honest, I think this one should be in the B tier. Just to start. It's hard to pick one to start because then you're going to have the other fights and we'll build around it and maybe we'll make some adjustments. But for now, Dricus and Strickland will throw in the B tier. Next up, Yair and Ortega. If you guys remember this one, I think it was in February. Could be completely off. But Ortega got badly hurt in the first round, was getting dropped, and then he comes back and gets a submission, landing some punches on the feet as you can see in that picture. It was a pretty wild back and forth fight. You thought the whole time Ortega was going to get finished, but then Rodriguez's Jose Aldo-esque takedown defense came through and he got taken down and then subbed. So pretty gritty performance from Ortega. Didn't go all five, but this was a great fight. Very exciting back and forth. I think that's what a lot of my fights of the year will be, because the ones that are most exciting for me are the ones that are going back and forth. You never know. The tide is constantly changing. You're like, oh, is this guy going to get it? Is this guy going to get it? So I think that ranks pretty highly for me. So I'm going to throw them in the A tier because that was pretty badass. And the sub at the end was pretty dope. And Ortega getting a win? Not expected. Moving on. Brendan Allen and Chris Curtis. This was a banger. Brendan Allen lost to Chris Curtis. Was it in Chris Curtis? No, it was Chris Curtis's second fight. Because in Chris Curtis's debut, he knocked out Phil Hawes. He came in hot in the UFC. Knocked out Phil Hawes, then he knocked out Brendan Allen. And I think he might have lost his next one after that. But he came in hot with a couple of good KOs. But Brendan Allen, Chris Curtis went to war. Curtis took it on short notice. It was very back and forth. Both guys landing. Brendan Allen had general control of the fight, I feel for the majority, but Curtis was landing good combinations to the body and to the head. I think this fight was better than Strickland Duplessis in my opinion, but I don't know if it's in the A tier, so I'll stick that in the B tier. Moving on, Drew Dober and Jean Silva. Now this is one of these ones where it was a really good fight. Both guys did land, but Jean Silva was in control of this fight. He was just battering Drew Dober pretty much the whole time on the counter. Drew Dober had a few moments, but nothing compared to the moments that Jean Silva had. And this is where the back and forth, it wasn't as evident as it is in the fights above. So I feel C tier, even though it was a great fight, I feel C tier is fair for these two. How about Fighting Nerds, though, in 2024? Maybe Gym of the Year tier list if I really just go full tier list mode. So original. Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot. This was a scrap. Back and forth. Grappling exchanges on the feet. Watching this back, I think I watched it back a week ago. And I was like, ooh, Gamrot probably won. But in the moment, I was like, nah, Hooker won. I wanted Hooker to win because Gamrot was taking split decisions left and right, the Turner one, Saryukian. Did he have another one in there? I'm not sure, but he was just taking split decisions, and I was like, Hooker in the top 5 again. Be pretty cool. And he got it done, and he did great work in this fight. He was defending the takedowns well, but Gamrot was like outstriking him. Gamrot dropped him, Hooker dropped Gamrot. This is another one of those back and forth bangers, and I think it is better than Ortega Yair. We're saving that S tier. We gotta keep the S tier. Might have more than one fight in it if I like really feel it's tied, but I don't know. I think it might only have one, and that one, Zellhuber and Rabovics at UFC 306. This S tier. When you talk about back and forth, exchanges on the feet, it was all contested on the feet. Both guys getting dropped and hurt bad. That third round was crazy. I was down here watching the fight, screaming. This fight had me like, oh, like this. As soon as I watched this fight, I knew it was gonna be a tough task to pass this one on my fights of the year, because I was just screaming throughout this whole thing. Both guys getting dropped and looked like they were gonna get finished, and I don't know how Zellhuber survived those last, the last few minutes of exchanges, where he was just getting rocked around the whole arena. Like it was insane. That is S tier for me. We have a few more fights to go through. I don't know if anything will touch that. That was the best fight of the year. For me, like bar none. Dricus and Izzy. Dricus making 2 appearances on here. GOAT. Shit. This, I thought, was a really good fight. Izzy looked tremendous. His striking looked really, really good. He was putting together combinations, landing body shots. He was defending the takedowns when they came decently. And Dricus was landing some shots too. I thought this was a really technical, I know it's Dricus, but a really technical fight, because Izzy's trying to deal with Dricus's blitz, and Izzy's trying to invest in the body, gas him out, but Dricus just, with that will, Dricus has just got that will, and he took him down, landed a few shots, and then took his back and choked him out. I think this, I don't know, it wasn't as like bloody war as these other ones like Hooker Gamrot or Ortega Yair even. Yair wasn't really that bloody in that one. Or Allen and Curtis. But I think I do want to put it in the A tier, because I thought this was one of the more technical ones and high level. Saying that with Dricus just feels so weird. But I really enjoyed watching this fight. I think I'll put it below Hooker and Gamrot, but like this was a really good fight, and I enjoyed watching it a ton. Holloway Topuria. Speaking of high level, this was extremely high level. I don't know if it had the back and force that I've been talking about. Holloway was landing, but you always just kind of had the sense, like the way that Topuria just walks these guys down, he seems so sure of himself. Even if he's getting tagged, he's not really getting tagged super clean. Like I think he got hit with one good right hand, or like one like clean right hand where you're like, oh, that landed. Could the tide be turning? But Topuria just stays so composed, calm in his stance, pressuring, and eventually he knocked out Max Holloway, which is just unreal. I think this is in the A tier as well. I think it is above Dricus and Adesanya, but is it below Hooker Gamrot? I think I might put it above Hooker Gamrot. Hooker Gamrot was more back and forth, but when you talk about high level, 2 of the best guys in the sport, striking wise, Holloway coming off of that Justin Gaethje fight, which we will get to here in this video, and Topuria just knocking out Volt. This was so highly anticipated, and the back and forths were so money. I watched this fight because I obviously illegally streamed it. University student here, can't be paying $80 every month, and I don't think anyone really does, but streamed it, and I was like, oh, I want to watch this fight over and over. So I went on Twitter, and someone just clutched up, uploaded the whole fight, so I screen recorded it, had no commentary, which was fine by me, But I watched that thing like 3 or 4 times, and it was just awesome. Never got old. Yeah, that's A tier for me. Bordering on S tier, but I don't know, it wasn't as crazy back and forth, have me screaming, pause, as Uibovics and Zellhuber. Jeez, I had CTE there for a second. Oliveira Chandler 2. This was pretty one-sided, except that 5th round, where Chandler came back, started landing. Don't get me wrong, I love Oliveira. I'm surprised I don't have my Oliveira shirt on right now. I have like 3 of them. But I don't think this stacks up that well against the other fights here. It's kind of... Just because it's Oliveira, it might go in the B tier. But Chandler was kind of just back up against the fence, getting beat up for 4 rounds. But then in the 5th, like, he tagged Oliveira, and it got a little stressful. And then he, like, just drummed on the back of his head with Keith Peterson doing absolutely nothing about it. I think I'll put it in the top of C tier, just because it was generally one-sided. No, we're going B tier. Jan Figueiredo. This was another very, very high level. Not as back and forth. Piotr Jan was pretty much in the driver's seat the whole time. But, Figueiredo did drop him. So I want to put this even above Oliveira Chandler. Yeah, I think there's good. I thought people overrated Oliveira Chandler a little bit because it was pretty dominant and Chandler just kind of back against the fence. Even though I love Oliveira. Holloway Gaethje, UFC 300. This was pretty one-sided, honestly. Gaethje had his moments. He did drop him. He was landing some decent low kicks, but it seems like Holloway just doesn't get affected by low kicks. I don't know how, but he just doesn't. Gaethje had his moments, but it was pretty much a Holloway masterclass. But then the way that the fight ended, it sends it into a new stratosphere in terms of fights of the year. So I think you gotta put it. Yeah, I think you have to put it up there as one of the top 3 fights of the year so far. Yeah, it was just the way that it ended. I know you don't really try to take in like, oh, it's not a best knockouts list or a best submissions list. It's a best fights, but the way that fight ended is crazy. Like, I'm bordering putting it in S tier, but it was kind of one-sided for Max Holloway. It was mostly Max Holloway dominating. So, I don't know. Islam Makhachev, Justin Poirier. This was an unbelievable fight. As high level as it gets. I think it might... I really, really love this fight. And the finish, too, in the 5th round. Poirier defending the takedown so well. Landing to the body, to the head. Cutting Makhachev. Makhachev doing really good on the feet. Oof. Is it better than Holloway to Poirier? I think it's better than Holloway Gaethje. I think I am going to put it as better than Holloway to Poirier. I think I will. Because this was like so high level. As was to Poirier Holloway. But this went 5. And it was less like... It was... You had a feeling Makhachev would win. Because like he was the heavy favorite. But there were times where it's like, oh, he can't really get his wrestling going. How's he going to do on the feet here? And he just showed he was, like, just on the same level as him on the feet. If not better. I don't know. That's a tough toss-up. I have watched Holloway to Poirier more times back than I've watched Makhachev and Poirier. So I might, based on just that, I might go Holloway to Poirier above it. Whitaker Costa, really good fight. Whitaker pretty much, he was in control of the fight for the large majority. His counters in this were beautiful. The way he was jabbing and then slipping and countering Costa was really, really nice. It was more back and forth than Jan Figueiredo. Yeah, I'll say there. This was a really good fight, but Whitaker was in control, I would say, for most of it, other than the spinning wheel kick. Yuri and Rakic. This back and forth, crazy. Yuri gets the finish. Classic Yuri fight. I think this does go in A tier because Yuri was just getting pieced up, and then he just was like, "Nah, I'm a samurai." Walked him down and KO'd him. So I'm kind of loving that. And A for Yuri. Joshua Van and Edgar Chairez. Another UFC 306 fight. This was a banger. Joshua Van's boxing is so pretty to watch. And Chairez was landing some good shots as well. This was a great fight. I want to throw it. I think it was better than Whitaker Costa, if I'm honest. Maybe even better than... Yeah. Okay. There in B tier. We're running through it now. Khalil and Pereira. This was a great fight. Both guys had moments. I think this is going to slide into the A tier. And the finish was awesome. I think... Was it better than... Yeah, it was probably better than Adesanya Duplessis. I don't know. That's a tough one because Pereira kind of took the first few rounds to measure, and he was landing like his outside first like lead leg calf kick, but he was just taking the first little bit to see what Khalil had, and then he started pouring it on. Yeah, I think it was a little bit better than Duplessis and Adesanya. Just that little bit better, but not as back and forth as Hooker Gamrot and not in a league with the other ones. And yeah, that is it for my best UFC fights of 2024 tier list. If there's fights that you felt should have been on here and were missed, leave them in the comments below. If you disagree with any of my decisions, leave that in the comments below. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching, and peace.